Now it's time for Polly Nonsense.
Thank you for listening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Polly Nonsense, hosted by Captain Kirk.
That's me.
And some guy named Jason. On the show today, we have on our hot topics, we have Elon Musk, Putin, the press secretary, Abbott Labs. But first, let's get into January 6th. The commission is back, baby. And not only is it back, it's more produced than ever.
The House committee investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol will hold its first major public hearing this week in prime time. Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern is when it all starts. The committee says that the hearings will provide the American people with new information on the multi-step effort to overturn the election and prevent the peaceful transfer of power.
Do you have any worries that this might be a political event?
I don't think so. I honestly think this commission is setting out for the truth. There is nothing else that they are possibly trying to gain from these commissions, from putting it on prime time, from CBS producing it, from them getting breaking news, from news that's happened a year and a half.
Like 7 months ago?
Oh, yeah, 7 months.
Give me grace.
7 months ago, breaking news. I don't think there could be any other possible motive for this commission.
Yeah, their intention seems pure.
Oh, I believe so. I believe they want to find out the truth. They are defending democracy, ladies and gentlemen, defending it. What's interesting about the commission is everyone knows. The New York Times had an article about how this is the Democrats' last grasp at maintaining any sort of power pull from the Republicans before the November elections.
Medhi Hasan, who hosts a primetime MSNBC show, I believe he used to work for Al Jazeera, so figure that one out. Even he was asking, is this really going to, quote, move the dials for the Democrats? And he was very skeptical.
The Guardian is reporting that the January 6th panel will be putting on at least 6 public hearings next month, some of them in prime time, all of them highlighting potentially illegal activities by Donald Trump and his team. As someone who helped manage the last Trump impeachment trial just weeks after the insurrection, how much hope do you have that these hearings will move the dial? Because many would argue, well, most people's minds are made up one way or another by now.
What new information could they possibly get?
Well, they promised bombshells and revelations, so unless you have a text from Trump to Meadows, unleash the hordes, okay, they're beautiful hordes, wonderful writers, I love them, you're not really going to get anywhere.
Well, unless they have the cast of Hamilton there again, I'm not going to watch.
Well, I think we have to rely on BTS right now, because they're the only ones that can save us.
When you first told me BTS, they were going to perform at this thing, like halftime. I didn't know.
Well, with the reality that we're living under,
it could.
Yeah, it could very well happen.
And with BTS, whenever I see them, I get kind of like a Hunger Games feel. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know, they're just...
Like a battle royale type thing?
They're just kind of good looking and like, okay, now it's time for Section 12 to fight Section 8. You know, like, it's a very odd thing.
Can you pass the marmalade?
That is mahogany.
Look at you. Just killed a placemat. You really want to know how to stay alive? You get people to like you.
January 6th, we'll see. This might be too much of an overkill. This might be, it might have too much of a desperate sheen to it.
Oh, the desperation is stinky cologne right now. And 90% of the time, it works 10% of the time. So, just like the Democrats, to overplay their hand, it's like the Republicans after 9/11, because they became the party of 9/11. There's a montage from the 2004 RNC. It was just 9/11, 9/11, 9/11, 9/11.
In the heart of this great city, we saw tragedy arrive on a quiet morning.
September 11th, September 11th,
September 11th,
September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, September 11th, 2001.
And that will be the Democrats' fate if they keep up with this January 6th thing.
January 6th.
Insurrection. Coup.
We are in a battle for the soul of America.
December 7th,
1941, September 11th, 2001, and January 6th, 2021.
As we reflect on that darkest day, we remember that the insurrection sought not only to attack the building, but to undermine democracy itself.
I viscerally feel the pounding on the gallery doors.
Well, they did arrest the leader of the Proud Boys,
Enrique Tarrio.
Yeah, so I don't know if anything's going to come from that.
Well, he was exposed last year, I believe it was before January 6th, as being essentially a honeypot for the FBI. He was an informant.
Oh, man.
Enrique Tarrio is the leader of the extremist group the Proud Boys. He also has a, quote, prolific past as an informer for federal and local law enforcement, repeatedly working undercover for investigators after he was arrested in 2012. That's according to a former prosecutor and a transcript of a 2014 federal court proceeding obtained by Reuters.
So is any of this going to be legitimate? Like,
no.
It's unlegitimate. And I do want people who are listening to this...
Disclaimer?
Yeah, disclaimer. I am not at all in support of what happened on January 6th. It was incredibly ugly, incredibly unnecessary. There was a bunch of stupid people trying to impose their will. But that being said, the attention that it has gotten, because hours later, hour and a half, 2 hours later, the Electoral College vote went in. Democracy was not stopped. It really had no effect other than the property damage and the one shooting death.
On October 10th, 2020, Ashli Babbitt celebrated her 35th birthday. 3 months later, she set off for Washington, D.C., and joined an estimated tens of thousands of like-minded Trump supporters at a rally protesting what they see as a stolen election.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. Today we will...
Not long after this photo was taken of Babbitt at the rally, she marched to the U.S. Capitol where Congress was certifying the 2020 election results. There, unarmed and still wearing the Trump cape, she started to climb through a broken window and was shot dead by a plainclothes Capitol Police lieutenant.
Benny Thompson, who I believe is from Mississippi, he's a Democrat, the co-chair of the January 6th committee, is not going to investigate the whereabouts of Nancy Pelosi, who was in charge of Capitol Police. Meanwhile, Muriel Bowser, the mayor of D.C., was in charge of Metro Police. She didn't put in any of those police officers.
We'll see. I just hope they get down to the bottom of it, once and for all.
And if you watch the New York Times visual investigation of that day, there's a cryptic mention of the Pentagon changing deployment procedures for the National Guard.
Only now, more than 3 hours after Capitol Police first called them, do National Guard soldiers arrive.
You can defuse and turn down right now.
Troops were staging just 20 minutes away, but a recent procedural change meant the highest level of the Pentagon had to approve deployment. And Pentagon officials delayed the decision, partially in fear of bad optics, even as the Capitol was being overrun.
I think that was Mark Esper, the defense secretary.
Interesting.
In your opinion, is President Trump a threat to democracy in this country?
I think based on his actions on January 6th, you can't come to any other conclusion.
What do you believe he was trying to do on January 6th?
I think he was trying to overturn the results of a legitimately certified election and the peaceful transfer of power.
It's almost like they kind of made it a little too easy to get to the Capitol.
Exactly. And when you have people at top levels of government calling Trump supporters neo-Nazis, etc., but they don't reinforce the Capitol, I have my doubts.
We'll see. Welcome back to Poly Nonsense. Vladimir Putin, it has been verified that he does have blood cancer. Does that give you any sort of perspective into what he is doing? Does that give you any kind of perspective into what he would do and what he's capable of doing? And if anything does happen to him, what then happens to Russia and the conflict in Ukraine?
Yeah, his clock is ticking now if these reports are true. And it might give some insight into the fact that he doesn't have much time on this earth. He needs to get things done in his perspective now.
And it also gives you the answer to why he had that enormous table during the pandemic where all of his advisors were 50 feet away from him.
French President Emmanuel Macron is in Russia. He met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow at a 20-foot-long table, thanks to COVID restrictions. Macron believes Russia has a right to ask questions about its security and seek guarantees.
He's immunocompromised if the
and that
reports
now
are true.
Makes sense. Mm-hmm. But before it was just like, what's he doing? We don't understand this. Like,
is he just some sort of Bond villain with a large table?
Yeah. Where's his large cat? Yeah.
Right.
But now it makes sense that he doesn't want anyone around him. Apparently, he had a 2-week where if someone came to Russia, they had to wait 2 weeks to see him. And then before he did anything, waited 2 weeks after he saw them. They had to go through some sort of tunnel. Did you hear about this?
I did not.
Yeah, they had to walk through some sort of tunnel that is just sucked germs out of them. I don't know. But this is something he was really, really nervous about and really worried about. And you can tell by his face too. Over the past year and a half, he looks like he's got a very bloated face.
He's retaining a lot of water.
He is retaining a lot of water. Like something's being pumped into him.
Well, there's been much speculation about Vladimir Putin's mental state. There are also questions about his physical health. In recent photos, his face has appeared puffy and bloated, prompting some to ask if he might be on steroids or something else.
Does it make you nervous at all, though, if it is very dire and it gets really bad that he could push a button? Do you think anyone around him would stop it before it got to that extreme?
Would he not want to press the button because he doesn't want his legacy to be the destruction of Russia in retaliation? I mean, obviously, if it's a nuclear fallout, who cares what the legacy is? But I'm just throwing that out there.
Right. Well, but theoretically, what he's doing right now
is already destroying the legacy.
Or enhanced it. I think the goal was to enhance his legacy
among his people. Right.
Right. To build the Russia back up to the original Soviet Union. They also say too that he's still pretty popular in Russia right now.
Well, all the pollsters are funded by Putin, so
yeah, that's true. We don't know what that's like here.
Ha. Heyo. Shots fired.
I'm just saying, we don't know what it's like. You know, it's Russia. They're crazy. No, but it is very interesting to see if this is so. He is ill. He is trying. You know, I don't know if he came to the United States. I know that they've had a bunch of different people fly in to look at him. It also came out too that he had a assassination attempt on him in March. I could not find anything. Maybe you know something about this. I could not find out what the attempt was. I don't know how they tried to get him, but I think if you're going to try to go after someone like Vladimir Putin, who he might be personally responsible for, I mean, maybe not hundreds, but close. You think hundreds?
Tens of thousands.
You think so? Personally?
Oh, well, as far as
like, I think
his warfare, not necessarily
warfare. I'm saying like people pulling on a doorknob and like people creeping into hospital rooms,
like Netanyahu's poison pens just squirt something into someone's ear.
Exactly.
On September 25th, 1997, Israel's Secret Service tried to kill Khaled Meshaal, political leader of the Hamas movement. This is the story of what happened. It proved to be one of the greatest fiascos in the history of special operations, and it was to prove a pivotal moment in the rise of Hamas.
So if you're going to try to go after someone like Putin, you better
not miss.
You better not miss. You better, because...
Well, how many attempts were there on Castro's life?
Oh, quite, yeah.
So many by the CIA, and they failed each time. So Putin, who is a former KGB, has probably more experience averting assassination attempts.
Well, that'd be interesting, too, to see who is behind the assassination attempt. Whether it is a Western-based...
It would have to be.
Necessarily. Don't you think it could be someone from inside the house? I mean...
Well, isn't he a very popular president?
I mean, not with everybody, but...
Oh, okay.
I guess some people...
Some skeptics of Putin's warfare,
Some people, yeah, some skeptics. On a related note, so Sweden and Finland now are wanting to join NATO. There has been some discussion of NATO moving east, is what prompted the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But then on the flip side, the reason why NATO was moving east was to somehow prevent something like this from happening.
Right. And there's a lot of talk among NATO skeptics that after the fall of the Soviet Union, NATO should have disbanded. Okay, well, that wasn't going to happen. There were a couple of agreements made with Ukraine in '94 to remove their nukes.
And they gave them to Russia.
Right. Under the pretense that Russia would not meddle in Ukraine, which was fine. We didn't know that Boris Yeltsin would become a AWOL drunk and be replaced by Putin. So there's some concern about how NATO is operating, alleged promise not to move eastward past Germany. But with Putin's rise, he almost gives the prima facie reason that they are moving eastward is to corral a historically aggressive Russia.
Well, and if Sweden and Finland now want to join NATO, it is doing the exact opposite of that, where now NATO is expanding. And plus, being of Finnish blood, being of Finnish descent myself, if you ever have a group of Finns that want to belong to anything, you have really screwed up.
You've really pushed the button.
If they want to sign up for your club, that means that is not good. So we'll see. I think NATO. I think they should take in Sweden. I think they should take in Finland. Obviously, there is worries that would you want to go to war over Finland? Would you want to go to war over Poland? The reason why NATO exists is to balance this out, and that's why it's important, because NATO is invading Finland. Finland is joining NATO. Russia invaded Ukraine.
Right.
Russia, if Finland is still neutral, Russia would invade Finland.
Right.
Especially if you have a bloated, dying
dictator
with his hand on the trigger.
We have to see how it goes.
Absolutely. Welcome back to Poly Nonsense, hosted by Captain Kirk and some guy named Jason. Kirk, I've been meaning to talk to you about something.
Yeah?
Yeah, you have been giving a lot of flack to the new press secretary.
I think you mean the first gay black immigrant press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre.
I am obviously acutely aware that my presence at this podium represents a few firsts. I am a black gay immigrant woman, the first of all three of those to hold this position.
That's the one, exactly. It's not easy corralling the press. It's not easy trying to dole out the news that the Biden administration so proficiently supplies.
Secretes out of its orifices?
Yeah, so,
it's tough. It's difficult.
It's a very difficult job. Of course, I guess you can't forget that she did this.
So, are you talking about a specific tweet?
He tweeted, "You want to bring down inflation, let's make sure the wealthiest corporations pay their fair share."
Look, we have talked about this past year about making sure that the wealthiest among us are paying their fair share. And that is important to do, and that is something that the president has been working on every day when we talk about inflation and lowering costs. And so it's very important that as we're seeing costs rise, as we're talking about how to build an America that's safe, that's equal for everyone and doesn't leave everyone behind. That is an important part of that as well.
But how does raising taxes on corporations lower the cost of gas, the cost of a used car, the cost of food for everyday Americans?
So look, I think we encourage those who have done very well, right? Especially those who care about climate change, to support a fair tax code that doesn't charge manufacturers, workers, cops, builders a higher percentage of their earnings, that the most fortunate people in our nation, and not let that stand in the way of reducing energy costs and fighting this existential problem, if you think about that as an example. And to support basic collective bargaining rights as well, right? That's also important. But look, it is, without having a fairer tax code, which is what I'm talking about, then manufacturing workers, cops, it's not fair for them to have to pay higher taxes than the folks who are not paying taxes at all.
And then there was a time that she did this.
You're saying when senior administration officials are talking to people in Saudi Arabia, the question of oil production never comes up.
I'm saying it's not the focus. It's not on the agenda, right? That's something for OPEC Plus to decide. Clearly, Saudi Arabia chairs that, and so we just want to be very clear on that.
Oh, and then there's that.
The president is clear on this question. He believes the right to peacefully protest in this country is fundamental. But he also believes that violence, threats, and intimidation have no place in political discourse anywhere. That is true whether it is in front of a courthouse or in front of a healthcare clinic. And that's the thing. I feel it seems like to us it is very one-sided on what we call out as intimidation or as violence.
As you said, it's like herding cats in there.
Yes. Yeah. It'd be difficult.
And imagine having to take questions from Peter Doocy after you call his network racist.
When you look at Fox News was racist before coronavirus. They are racist during the coronavirus. Fox News will be racist after the coronavirus. So there is nothing new here.
Yeah, that one's going to be hard to live down.
That's awkward. It's very interesting, too, that through all this, it makes you miss Psaki.
Yeah, I actually pine for Psaki. She actually was one of the few competent people in administration.
Oh, pining for Psaki.
I never thought I'd say that.
So Elon Musk, the most powerful businessman on the face of the planet, has really ruffled some feathers as of late. A few days ago, he sent out a tweet that said for all of the Tesla employees to return back to the office and to work their 40 hours a week. Or they can, I believe the quote is, pretend to work somewhere else. That's awesome.
I love that.
Awesome. That's an awesome tweet.
That's good.
He's getting cooked for this. Is there anything behind it, though?
Well, I think Elon Musk has a track record unparalleled with how many billion-dollar companies he's created, and has a vision for how he believes teams need to work in order to achieve results. And that's been proven time and time again. And so the balance of a non-pandemic remote work culture forever, we've never seen before, and we don't know what those results are. Are we going to bet on the individual who's had a track record unparalleled in business, or are we going to go with a philosophy that may or may not be true? And we know that teams working together tend to have more creativeness, accomplish more. And there's actually, and I run a recruiting and staffing firm, that there's less turnover in a non-virtual world. And when you're running Tesla, the leading automobile company and innovator in the world, I think that you have the ability to make those decisions.
And there's been, it sparked quite a bit of conversation and a little bit of debate over it.
But unlike the vast majority of CEOs that I've spoken to, he is saying what everyone wishes they could do without losing people. But the fundamental question for me is, what problem is he solving for? What visibility is he worried about? To what extent is this about perception of work or the substance of work? So there's a lot to unpack here, but he's doing something many wish that they could do, but there's a big risk here. He may lose people.
That being said, what prompted him to send this out? What prompted him to tell his workers, hey, I want you all back in the office. I want butts in seats, and I want you working 40 hours a week.
I'm not entirely sure. Do you have an idea?
I have a theory, is that he went and saw the headquarters of Twitter, and he saw that there was nobody there.
Yeah, right.
Nobody there. Apparently, Project Veritas broke a story that the Twitter employees, they take mental health days, which I get, but for months they take long lunches. They don't show up. They're getting paid exorbitant amount of money, and they're not in the office.
But Twitter is like mental health is everything. Like if you're not feeling it, you can take a few days off. People take months off.
And I think to a certain degree, it kind of not scared Elon, but really showed him what it's possible.
So entering the barren wasteland of Twitter is probably, in your mind, what spurred him on to this.
Yeah, where he's like, not here, guys, not here. We cannot do that. And now the discussions with Twitter are somewhat stalling. Twitter cannot supply a ballpark figure of how many bots are actually on it. And so why would Musk then be spending all of this money in a company that is half fake?
So Twitter had announced to the SEC that a certain percentage of their accounts were fake and that they were handling them in certain ways. But apparently an audit conducted by Musk and his team found that it was far higher. So that's fraud as well as lying to the SEC, if that's true.
So if that does happen and the deal does not go through, is he still on the hook for $1 billion?
I do believe so, just because of how the agreement was reached. So, he's out $1 billion, but he's not out $44 billion on a fraudulent website.
So I just can't believe that he'd walk away from $1 billion.
I think he's achieved his aim, really.
What's the aim of that?
To further demonstrate that Twitter is a tech giant that is an emperor without clothes.
Makes sense.
And by the way, Jason, before we finish this segment, have you heard, with all the tragic news the past couple weeks, this caught my eye and I thought it was interesting. So the baby formula shortage, there was a whistleblower for the Abbott Labs. Came out last October. Have you heard how the FDA is covering themselves in regards to not acting on that sooner?
I did not. I have not heard anything about this.
Apparently, it was lost in the mail.
The FDA says it didn't receive the whistleblower complaint until February, 4 months after it got to the agency's mailroom. The FDA blaming the failure on the lack of staffing due to COVID-19.
Literally, we're blaming the mailroom.
It was too slow, and there were decisions that were suboptimal along the way.
Can you believe that?
I can't. Who has mail?
That was ridiculous. I don't have mail.
I don't have mail.
I get junk mail. That's it.
That's ridiculous. So, they got lost in the mail.
And that, unfortunately, that news got kind of lost in this news cycle. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention.
Interesting. Now it's time for the show that we call Errors and Corrections. This is where Kirk and I sit down and admit what we got wrong on previous shows.
We screwed up.
We're sorry. Some of the errors that we had for our last show, Kirk, you said that our President Biden farted in front of the Queen.
I did.
He did not fart in front of the Queen.
Ooh.
He farted in front of the Duchess of Cornwall, Camilla.
I should get that right. I apologize.
You should. Especially when in front of royalty, you should know who's farting where. On the midterm elections, I said, we'll see what the impact would be on the company. I meant to say the country.
Hey, we all make mistakes.
My bad. Also, too, finally, the capital of Missouri is not Jackson. It is Jefferson. I apologize.
Get it right.
I apologize. And now, just the headlines we just didn't get to. Groom leaves bride at altar after being stuck in an elevator.
Driverless trucks will begin delivering goods to Sam's Club stores in Dallas.
Hyundai is recalling 239,000 cars for exploding seatbelt parts. So if your seatbelt has exploded, get that checked out. And finally, Rebel Wilson cheers on Prince Harry in cowboy boots at the Santa Barbara polo game.
And that's just the headlines we just didn't get to.
If you're interested in emailing us or contacting us at all, please email us at pnpodcastmail@protonmail.com. That's pnpodcastmail@protonmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. On behalf of Captain Kirk and some guy named Jason, this has been Poly Nonsense. We'll catch you next time.